Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we're in two different cities, but we're back together again, I guess.
Yes.
So a lot of new
Hello.
technology today. We messed up the other day. We couldn't get it running. We missed an episode, but it looks like StreamYard is working for us today.
Yes. So here we are. And unfortunately, once again, with the horrifying, terrible news that Charlie Kirk has passed, I can't say it in the first few seconds, but
he was I think he was a big inspiration to us both, especially when we first started. This was the era of cancellation when the left was really wanting to shut down speech. What we're looking at, like 7, 8, 9 years later, they've completely failed to shut down speech. They almost did until Elon Musk stepped in with X, and now they don't know how to shut down speech. And because they're losing the debate, they're wanting to end the lives of debaters.
And as Charlie Kirk himself used to say, once speech and debate ends, violence is next. So
yeah,
they took out the good ideas and they wanted to replace them with the worst ones.
Okay, you don't need to be so sad. We can just be normal here. What I was going to say here was the left is really just cracking up here. I don't think we're necessarily need to cool down the temperature. We're seeing the implosion of the left. They're literally calling for civil war. And I was watching Dusty today, and it was like civil war or nothing. That's all it is. They only have two options. They're going to cease to exist, or they're going to go forward with this thing. And I don't think the right's going to engage. The right, we know we're winning the debate. We know we're winning the war of words, the war of ideas. Since this happened with Charlie Kirk, I've seen a mass exodus of many, I would say, more moderate liberals really coming over to the conservative side.
Mm-hmm. And but then some others like doubling down on it.
Yeah, but there's those people that are doubling down, turning towards violence. If another action happens again, it's going to really hollow out the more mainstream liberals that are that kind of there. Mm-hmm. So I think the more they turn to violence, the more it's going to backfire. The right was lucky with January 6th because they really learned the lesson. Nothing good comes from violence. The other side's going to weaponize it against you. It's going to hurt your base. It's going to hurt your political movement. So we've really gone to warfare with the battlefield of ideas, the battlefield of thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it could, like, as Charlie also used to say, I mean, this was the turning point now, and it is up to each individual, both on the left and the right, to decide which path they want to take. On the left, they've basically only made one path because even not everybody, but some of their like prominent commentators and political figures have not been able to fully grasp that this is also due to a lot of what they've been inciting as well.
Yeah, I think we're just going to continue with the war of words, the war of ideas. If the left wants to continue to get violent, they're going to continue to hollow out their base, and it's going to backfire on them. We got started with the Canadian truckers convoy. That's when we really started doing YouTube videos and stuff like that. We just had to do something because for years leading up to that, the Canadian government had just gone off the hinges. So now here we are.
But it is also insane that now we see the reaction to this in Canada in particular, with a lot of the professors, with a lot of the students, just regular people posting horrible things but at the same time, in the US, we are having some kind of reaction of them getting some sort of consequences, either fired or at least put on leave. Here, the universities have actually said that they weren't really going to do anything for people posting stuff.
I don't necessarily think they should do anything. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech, and we don't need real world consequences of them losing their job. What's happening are the moderate liberals are really disengaging from the radicals, and they're coming over to the conservative movement, and it's going to become even a more large tent movement. So just these people celebrating online and things like that, although it's not good for the family to maybe see, in general, it is de-radicalizing a lot of people on the left, I think.
And I do worry, and we were talking about this earlier, about the actual further radicalization that could happen if they do start getting consequences. But at the same time, it's like we cannot live in a civil society that does not impose any rules or any consequences. There is no freedom without discipline, consequence, and responsibility.
Yeah, well, you're seeing these crazy lunatic leftists, and we have a couple videos later of this where they're talking about they lost their job, they're in tears, they're banging their head against the wall. It looks like the straw that may have broke the camel's back, and this is very dangerous because these are the very people when they have nothing to lose, they're willing to go to extreme lengths. These are the next radicals that are really going to step up when they have nothing to lose. They've already disassociated from their family, shut their family out, made other radicals the people they're hanging around with. A lot of these radicals are at their workplace. So when they lose their job and they lose the connection to the little friends they have, the consequences might not be so good.
But at the same time, I'm guessing all or most of us do want some sort of retribution or of them realizing that they've done something.
Well, maybe you do. And I do see a lot of people online that want retribution. I don't need retribution. The retribution that we're kind of getting is these radicals that are celebrating, they're cutting off their moderate base, and they need their moderate base to win elections. You're going to see a consolidation of power come the midterms and come the next election because liberals just don't agree with these extremely progressive radicals, and they have kind of taken over the party.
And exactly, and the ones that do, and the ones that still want to consider themselves liberals instead of progressive or far left, I guess is now the term that we should use. They are themselves have to realize that they're already there by some of the opinions that they used to think they could just freely give with no consequence or with nobody pushing back. But it was because they themselves had censored and kind of taken out of anywhere that they could have the public discourse, all of the opinions that would go against theirs. So they've only been in their own echo chamber listening to the same drivel over and over again, which is also what most of the normies, to call them that way, listen to, because that is what we see on mainstream media. And there's a bunch of articles that had been written, not just about Charlie, but about a lot of conservative far-right pundits or commentators or activists like Charlie, calling them the worst things and equating them to the worst things, which it might be in rhetoric, but most people, especially the ones that are already kind of unhinged and off the rails, will take as literal. And it's become too ingrained within the discourse that violent words are violence, and there has to be a separation between actual violence and what some would consider violent words, which are just words.
Well, I watch a lot of liberal think tanks. I mean, more than I probably should. That's good for me. But there is a movement within these liberal think tanks. Specifically, there's something called Rick TV. Destiny's on there quite a bit. He may be becoming more radicalized, but the other liberals on that channel are not. And they want to tone down the discourse. The problem is the party is split right now, and you have half of them radicalizing while the other half want to tone it down. The half that want to tone it down realize that the midterms are slipping from their fingers because the radicals are amping it up right now.
But the problem I do see with the people that have this let's tone it down discourse is that a lot of the times, and it's all the way from CNN, MSNBC to people that are appearing on, for example, Piers Morgan today, saying, oh, it's both sides. And there's a lot of this both sidesism. Well, yes, we have to tone down the rhetoric on both sides. So they're not even willing or able to say that it is mostly just on their side. But they still want to keep blaming the side that has been all about free speech, all about debate, all about discourse.
They constantly want to complain about Trump. They're all blaming it on Trump. And the one liberal today on this think tank, she made a great point. And she's like, the majority of the left has already moved past Trump and is thinking about what's coming next. And that's very true. And these people are demanding that Trump tones down the rhetoric. It doesn't matter what Trump does. The Republican Party or the MAGA portion of that wing is kind of thinking what's coming next. JD Vance, Steve Bannon, the other commentators are positioning themselves for what does come after Trump. So I don't think it's necessarily up to Trump or the right to tone down the rhetoric. The rhetoric that's been amped up has been through debate. It's a war of ideas, and the left has lost that war. That's why they want to shut down the debate. They want to put guardrails on speech because they can't win in a war of ideas.
But then also what happens with all of these, especially younger kids? I mean, luckily a lot of them have been influenced by, especially Charlie Kirk. He was the youth, he had the youth sector, and he had built that over 10 plus years since he was 18 and built it from the ground up. And he did have the ear and the hearts and the minds of a lot of young people, even turning them towards either conservatism or religion or all of these ideals. But then there's the other section that essentially live online, are very sheltered, are very shut in, and have grown in an environment where they don't even learn how to properly behave like actual human beings. And Tim Pool today was saying, because I was listening to their culture war thing, he was on with a psychiatrist, I think, and talking about mental health, which I just call mental illness because that's what it should be called. They were talking about the way that especially this young generation that's going to be voting soon and the younger ones have only lived in this world and this ecosystem where we're seeing things constantly. I mean, we saw Charlie Kirk be assassinated live, almost all of us, and we, even if you didn't want to, saw the video close up. And the effect that that has had, not just with this one, but with every single other instance of violence or retribution or the rhetoric itself, and the lack of consequences and lack of being able to grasp what actual life means and what death means and what a lot of the things that they advocate for even are. I don't think a lot of them know because they're so desensitized. I don't know if there's a way to bring them back, for example.
Yeah, well, it's easily cutting between two lines. People that want to go into socialism and maybe eventually communism because the country is falling apart and they see no hope for the future. They see no ownership in a house. Jobs are becoming scarce. The economy is struggling. And then you have the other side, which is the conservative side. They want to rebuild America. They literally want to make America great again. And these are and when you have hope and despair, I think people are going to be drawn towards hope. And I think there are a lot of liberals that do want to rebuild the country. And we've already seen one mass exodus of liberals come over to the conservatives during Trump. I think we're about to see another mass exodus. As these radicals take over the Liberal Party, the remaining liberals are going to come to the conservative side because conservatism really just, it is a form of liberalism. And if liberalism wants to survive, it's going to have to survive in a skin suit. I think the new paradigm is going to be conservatism and Christian nationalism. And it's going to be a right paradigm rather than a left paradigm as it had been for the last 20 years.
But my question still remains, what happens and what do we do to all of these students that are still celebrating, to all of the people that have been that have been indoctrinated into the most insane side of the left.
Yeah, you let them be, you let them radicalize, and if they want to lash out with violence, hatred words, and celebrate, it's gonna hollow out the base of their party, and they will no longer have political power. They'll fade off into irrelevance. You'll see sparks of violence here or there, but overall, you'll get some sanity back into politics as the left hollows itself out with these radicals. So you just let them be. You can't try to save them. You can't try to arrest them. If they do violence or they do a crime, you can arrest them then. But and you don't take their freedoms away from them, because if you do, you're going to pass laws. They're going to strip your own people of their freedoms. And as the power consolidates on the right, that's what we have to be careful of, stripping other people of their freedoms, which strip us of ours.
Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what Charlie, I believe, would advocate as well, and would say usually that you don't want to do the exact same things that the other side has tried already to do with MAGA or with the Christians by labeling them domestic. I can't say the word on YouTube.
Why don't we get into some stories today?
Okay. I was going to keep going.
I just felt like we're going on with speeches here.
Well, people, let me see if I can make this work.
Well, nobody's watching, so.
Tells me 2 people are watching. I'm guessing you're one of them.
Well, you literally posted it and you didn't take it down. We missed it, and I think YouTube's definitely going to punish the channel for that. So
you took it down. I just moved it for today.
Okay.
But we have seen a big response on the positive side. Well, not positive, but on the mourning side and on the recognizing Charlie's work and on the trying to celebrate his very short life, and we see it all over the place. And here we see from Inevitable West breaking, thousands are beginning to gather in central London to pay tribute to hero Charlie Kirk. Britain stands with America, and the sane side of Britain stands with America.
This is actually really big for Britain, because Trump is going to go over there in a little bit, and he's going to start saying we don't have the same values. If you want us to be allies with you, just like JD Vance says, you're going to have to protect free speech. And this is not just a memorial for Charlie Kirk. This was actually originally a free speech rally, but with Charlie Kirk's death, Charlie Kirk was a champion of free speech. So what you're seeing now is this rally that was supposed to be the largest free speech rally in the UK is also becoming a memorial and a remembrance for Charlie Kirk, which is just absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And also a lot of people saying, we stand with Charlie, we are Charlie, I am Charlie, je suis Charlie, like using now. And I think also that is one of what the goal was in the end with Turning Point, and with what he was trying to build, especially with the youth, to rally and become an actual movement. And it sucks that it had to come to this, and that this is the way it's getting even more traction, but at least people are realizing the importance of debate and free speech, and that is one of the core values. I mean, it's the First Amendment for the United States, but also for a lot of other countries as well that are losing and are letting this slip by because they never put it into their own constitution.
Yeah, you're only seeing one country really stand up for free speech right now, and that is America. Canada isn't doing it. Australia isn't doing it. The EU and the UK. A matter of fact, all these countries are going the opposite direction, except for their people. You're seeing a disconnect from the government, who's becoming authoritarian and trying to shut down speech and even thought in the UK. There are now thought crimes. We've kind of covered that before. But the United States has stood up for free speech. They are leading the way. What we need is the American administration to go over to the UK, go over to the EU and say, if you want to be our partners, which they do, because America is running NATO and they do have the military backbone, which the EU doesn't have, they're going to need to get their house in order and start protecting free speech. The problem is a lot of these governments were liberalist, globalist governments, and they're seeing it just crumble before their eyes, and they had put decades into this. The only way, they're trying to hang on to what little threads they have left, and they're trying to censor speech so they can hold on to those last remaining threads of globalism.
And I did not forget, like you said, to move on, but I did want to say, and I mean, I have been thinking about it since it happened, since I just heard he had been shot initially, about his two little kids, thinking about his wife, Erica, thinking about his really small son and his very young daughter, and just the pain and the immeasurable suffering that they must be having, and our thoughts are with them. And
yeah, it's going to be very interesting if she becomes a political figure now, because we had this scenario in the past where we had political figures or commentators that had lost their lives, and their wives came up behind them and on their platform. So I think she's could have a very powerful voice in the conservative movement going forward.
Maybe, but I mean, his body's not yet on the ground, so let's not start thinking what she might do. I think right now she's devastated, and
okay, let's just
very powerful picture that came up of her wearing on the motorcade escorting his body back in Arizona, and she had the fortitude of a grieving woman to put down the window and say, wave to the crowd that was there to give their condolences as well. So
yeah,
she is showing.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's too early. There are going to be people gunning for that TPUSA organization. She knows better than anybody what Charlie wanted, what his values were, and I think she probably embodies those values herself. So she should really attempt to protect that organization, and I hope she does have a political footprint, and I don't think it's too early.
Maybe, but I mean, not for a while. Her kids are very young, and now they are growing up without a father, and a very dedicated father at that, and a very faith-based father at that, and that knew the importance of not just being a father, but having a father. And he spoke about it on and on and on about how that has been one of the things that has corroded American society, not just American, but I do think it's important now that she is also a mother, because that's all they have for now.
Yeah, I think you can be more than just a mother. I definitely think she's going to have a voice going forward. Why don't we go into the next story?
She can if she wants to. So the next one is, I mean, we also did not say this up the top. They did apparently have caught at least the suspect, I will say, I guess for legal reasons, but they have found out maybe probably who did the heinous act.
And it was very interesting because he came from a conservative family that were very proud gun owners and a lot of other things. It seems like he may have diverged when he went to college, and this seems to be a typical story in the United States. I don't want to jump to too many conclusions, but he wasn't necessarily a trans-presenting person which was originally put forward.
Well, it was speculated by a bunch of people. It wasn't put forth officially, but he
actually, yeah, it was put forth officially by the people that leaked it to Steven Crowder.
They said there were on the casings, which is true. It had there were mentions to, or at least allusions to, online speech that refers to trans people, or furries at least, in one of the casings that was not spent. But with now this information, and especially with a lot of people taking on the fact that, oh yes, his family apparently seemingly might have been conservative in some way, I do think that conversation also is very important. The whole, how does somebody that does grow up with those values completely turn and radicalize the other way? And it does seem maybe at some point he was leaning more conservative, and then he got really into politics and really on the left. Again, this is all very
I don't think it's much of a question. A lot of people go through that directly at that age when they go to college. They start questioning everything. They rebel against their parents, everything they were taught growing up. So this is a normal storyline. It's just he got a little bit more radicalized than a lot of other people. I used to have different political beliefs when I was young, a lot of stuff that I'm embarrassed about now, but it's part of growing up.
But at the same time, he wasn't in college for that long. He was there, I think, a semester, and then he dropped out. So I don't think it was fully college. It does seem like he was someone that was online constantly. I mean, he was on Discord servers. He did know a lot of the lingo for gaming words, I'll just call them. So I would point it a lot more towards not social media use, but radicalization groups online.
Oh, well, I don't want to go into, I don't really, yeah, whatever. Like, people can go online and they have freedom to go online. If
no, I'm not saying they don't.
Well, we just seen this go the other way. And now you're bringing up a conversation, which is, the radicalization of the left from online. The left just did that to the right recently. And I think it's a little bit of a ridiculous conversation. And yes, it can happen. It potentially did happen, but a lot of people are online and they don't get radicalized. So,
yes, but what I'm saying is it most likely was not just the university, because he wasn't there for that long. He was one of these men that got disenfranchised, that had no real future, that didn't see a way out, and that started blaming everybody else for their own problems.
Well, I think he did see a way out. He had a scholarship to the university, which was which was pretty impressive. But on top of that, when we start having this conversation online of, he was radicalized online, that's exactly what they did to the right. That's exactly what Canada is talking about right now. That's exactly what the UK is talking about right now. And this is how they're enacting legislation about how to strip free speech, how to have online censorship. So I don't care if somebody is radicalized online. We need to be teaching them critical thought at a young age, so when they do come online, they can roam freely.
But then that's what was my next point. I was going to say we can't go towards the whole let's censor, let's etc., but at least expose. And that's why free speech is so important, to be able to expose what actually goes on online and teach parents or teachers or whoever is going to be in these people's lives, young people's lives, the things that actually happen. Because a lot of, I mean, we saw when they gave when they read out all of the things that were written on the shell casings, they read out a lot of the things, and I was watching older adults, let's just say commentators, and they had no idea what those terms meant. they had no idea why it said, what was it? The whole etc. So the fact that a lot of people aren't even informed and don't even understand where those terms or how those terms mean anything.
It's more important that we teach the individual how to have critical thought. So when they do go to online spaces, they can look at things discerningly and not become radicalized one way or the other, because both sides do have the option to radicalize somebody.
How do you do that when the schools, the universities, everywhere has been completely infected by this same kind of thought?
We're seeing,
so you don't have people.
we're seeing
Charlie, and now he's
we're currently seeing a cultural shift. It's happening in the universities. It's happening in the colleges. It's happening in a lot of places. So I'm a lot less concerned about online radicalization. I think that just leads to censorship. If you fearmonger parents, teachers, things like this, they're going to start wanting to censorship online speech.
I'm not saying fear mongering. I'm saying just actually learning what they're saying. A lot of people are shocked that so many kids and students are celebrating that Charlie Kirk was murdered. It's it shouldn't be surprising if you knew what actually goes on.
And yeah, so what if they're celebrating? They're going to celebrate. People on, like, you can't not have people give their emotions out and how they feel. If that's how they feel, they should be able to say it, and then that lets other people see it. It's very important those people are allowed to celebrate online, because then the moderates are going to walk away. The moderates from the Democratic.
I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to celebrate online. What I'm saying is we should realize that there are a bunch of people that are not humans basically anymore. They don't understand human emotions, and they're closer to on the psychopath side than the actual human being that has feelings.
I think you sound a lot like how the liberals sound in their think tanks. They say, "Oh, the conservatives, they're not humans. They can't be changed. They're radicalized." No, I'm
saying
you sound just like that.
But what I'm saying is there has been a clear movement away from understanding what death means, the gravity of situations.
Okay, the left says the same. The left says the same thing about the right.
But no, number one.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I was literally watching it before we went on the air right now. You can watch it on.
What they do to the right is they dehumanize the right. What I'm trying to do with the left is trying to say, let's make them human again.
Okay,
let's make them understand the gravity of situations.
They
become, everybody, not just the left, but everybody has become so desensitized to a lot of these things because we see them daily, and it's not healthy for anybody.
Okay, why don't we go into the next story here?
This one?
Whatever you have next for us.
So this is about the suspected assassin. Do you want to see it all or just a bit of it?
Yeah, let's watch whatever you got.
This was from the press conference earlier today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident. This information was relayed to the Utah County Sheriff's Office and scene investigators at Utah Valley University. This information was also conveyed to the FBI. Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29 a.m. on September 10th. In which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes. When encountered in person by investigators in Washington County on September 12th, in the early morning hours, Robinson was observed in consistent clothing with those surveillance images. Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate. The family member also confirmed Robinson had a gray Dodge Challenger. Investigators identified an individual as the roommate of Robinson. Investigators interviewed that roommate, who stated that his roommate, referring to Robinson, made a joke on Discord. Investigators asked if he would show them the messages on Discord. He opened it and showed several messages to investigators and allowed investigators to take photos of the screen as each message was shown by Robinson's roommate. These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact named Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of
Okay,
these
I think that's pretty good.
included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler.
Oh, did you have anything to say about it?
Oh, I was just looking for the next story. I thought you were going to say stuff.
No, we can go into the next story if you want.
Well, it's just talking more about more information about the suspect, I will say. Hold on. How do I?
Oh, I don't want to watch the same video at the same press conference. Let's go into the story.
Oh, no, it is a story.
Okay.
It's from The Independent. What?
They're just going to reiterate kind of what they said in the press conference, I think, in this story.
Okay. Do you want to go to the next one? There are more crowds that gathered at in London after that first video we showed. Do you want to watch this one?
Yeah, you can watch it a little bit.
From the British Patriot, breaking huge crowds gather at Winston Churchill's statue in London, candles lit, honoring Charlie Kirk's life. They try to silence everyone, but instead they've ignited a Christian awakening.
Be under no illusion. Meek and mild, turn the other cheek is over. Each and every one of you should be radicalized by what has happened.
Turn it down a little bit.
It is time to get organized and mobilized.
Christ is King! 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 Christ is King!
Okay, that's pretty good. And if you can't understand, they're yelling, Christ is King. And I think this is going to be the new paradigm, and it's going to be Christian nationalism and conservatism rather than liberalism versus conservatism. And I think that's kind of where we're headed. I think the liberals are going to hollow out their political party, and the moderates are going to come over and be conservatives. The thing is, I don't think that they want a non-moving moral foundation, and I think the Christian nationalists do. So I think that may become the new paradigm, probably sometime after the next major election, not the midterms, but the one that is going to decide the president of the United States.
But for example, you were just saying that this side or the right shouldn't be calling for further radicalization. What do you think about stuff like this and them saying we are going to radicalize towards being towards Christian nationalism? Yeah,
I think that's the new paradigm. Is you're going to have moderate conservatives. You think you have moderate conservatives and Christian nationalists. It can turn bad, but I mean, I want a non-moving moral foundation, so I can somewhat sympathize with the Christian nationalists, but I'm also much more moderate on a lot of other positions. So I also sympathize with the conservatives. I like the paradigm of a right paradigm, though.
But what do you feel of some calls for radicalization and some calls for de-escalation? Like, which way forth as well on this side?
Yeah, well, what you're going to see is the more moderate wing of the conservatives. They're not going to turn towards violence. If they do turn towards violence, they'll be disavowed by the mainstream conservatives because they have the party much more in line. So that's why you don't have this continuous cycle of radicalization on the right. If there is one shooter or one bad apple, once they do that bad act, the conservatives will disavow that. Well, the left won't. When that one bad apple goes out and does something like Charlie Kirk, you see a lot of people celebrating, and then they're putting out hit lists for the next people that come out, and then you have the next person step up. And it's a re-radicalization, and the cycle begins again for the left. The right doesn't have that problem right now. That we understand we're winning the war of words, we're winning the war of ideas. Therefore, there is no real reason to radicalize on a physical level.
I mean, with Charlie, I don't think that was a win, but he was trying to do that. And I do think, and I hope that message continues and spreads and more people understand why it was so important, what he was doing. But there's also a lot of calls and a lot of people talking about potential civil war. First on the right, I heard it, and now on the left, and the right is trying to tamp it down. So could there be one? Is this the start of one? Is this Franz Ferdinand?
Well, the right's been talking about it for years. They can kind of see what was happening to the left. The difference is now the left is writing mainstream articles about this thing. You're seeing the tip of the spear leftist minds like Destiny, like these other think tanks that are online, literally saying they're going to cease to exist or there's going to be a civil war. That's the only two options. I was literally watching a show before this, and that's what the leftists on this panel are saying. This is what the mainstream media is saying. We're seeing the implosion of the left in real time. That's why they're calling for civil war right now. The problem is they need two people to create that dance, and the right knows that they're winning with speech and debate. And I think they're going to stay on that line as long as the right stays within speech, stays within debate, stays within the political boundaries, they're going to win.
And hopefully they don't forget that part as well and start continuing with the calls for further escalation, as some have, but not most. And we actually haven't seen any actual examples of that happening, luckily.
I haven't heard anybody on the right call for physical violence.
No, not physical violence, but saying this is where the words end, this is where the debate ends, this is where, etc. At least at the beginning, when a lot of anger, because there is still a lot of anger, and I think that anger is going to be felt for quite a long time, but it's the way it gets channeled that is the most important part, because you can do very positive things through anger as well, or through indignation, through indignation.
The right has alternative social media. They have think tanks. They have political organizations. We're well organized at this point because we were coming from behind, and we had to well organize in an alternative space. So I don't think you're going to see. I don't think you're going to see much violence from the right. And if you do, I think you're going to see the mainstream right kind of disavow that violence. And I think the left is completely different. They're literally putting out lists right now of who the next people should be, celebrating this. When they celebrate this, it makes the other people that are radicalized in the left think it's okay to do this. We should go ahead and do it again. It's the only way. We have to start a civil war. The only way to start a civil war is with real violence. That's what the left is going towards right now. And the left is going, I think, the complete opposite direction. And we have good role models and good influencers to steer us in the right direction on the right.
And now, especially also with all the work Charlie Kirk has done, also just to continue on the train.
I mean, I would even say some of the most radical people on the right would probably be Christian nationalists, and even the Christian nationalists are using speech because they know they're winning. You can look at Andrew Wilson. He's probably the most famous Christian nationalist and probably the online leader of that movement. And he's not calling for any kind of physical violence. It's all a war of words, and he's doubling his efforts with his war of words and his debates. And it's the right path to go down.
And especially with this incident, it is becoming more and more clear up to now. It's been 3 days, but hopefully it continues that way. The reaction is completely different on the left and the right when these kinds of things happen. There's nothing burning. There's no cities burning. There's no looting. There's no nobody being, can't say the words on YouTube, but the reaction has been completely different. It's candles, it's vigils, it's people praying. So the difference, the market difference is already there. And just point to how the right has reacted versus how the left has reacted.
Yeah, why don't we give an example here? And yeah, you were just going to give it, I guess. George Floyd, it was $16 billion worth of damage. Dozens of cities across the United States were literally burned to the ground. Massive amounts of violence, massive amounts of shootings. They had a no-go zone in Seattle where they created their own independent state. We're not seeing any of that on the right. And this was arguably a much bigger figure on the right. And what we're seeing are candlelight visuals and people online starting to redouble their efforts, not taking one step back. And we're ready to go into the debate sphere and have the war of ideas. The left desperately wants the right to resort to violence. And if they can get the right to resort to violence, they want people on the right to cheer it on. As long as we don't fall into that trap, we've won.
And they do, and they want the right to resort to violence because that is the only thing that they're capable of doing at the moment, because they have lost the ideas debate, and they do see so many people leaking from their movement and going elsewhere because they see where it leads to. I mean, it happened to me, 8 years ago? And I realized how insane it was all the way back then. And and now it's just gotten way worse. But it is important to continue to remember that it's through the war of words and through the winning debates and through the just demonstrating your side is better without really having to do much other than give ideas out, because the ideas are better.
Well, and this is why the battle in American politics is so important, because they're the only ones left with free speech. You're seeing the UK, the EU, Canada, censoring free speech, putting all kinds of laws into hate speech, and moving their societies quickly towards socialism. You will own nothing and you will be happy. That was their plan all along, and Donald Trump is throwing a monkey wrench into it. The American people actually feel like they have a voice because they have the ability to have free speech.
Mm-hmm. But you did have a video, you gathered some stories, I gathered others about foreshadowing, but I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, why don't we play it? It's Charlie Kirk, actually. Why don't we hear what he had to say?
So ATX Irish Gal says this is eerie, Charlie Kirk foreshadowing.
She's trying to get out the visual and the idea of assassinating Donald Trump. This is where this is headed. I hope everyone understands, whether it be Julius Caesar, Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Bobby Kennedy. The assassinations of major political leaders are nothing new. And yet we've kind of been immune to that for a couple of decades. We have been warning about this for months. Now, the very interesting question is, will they try to kill Joe Biden or Donald Trump? That's the interesting question. Which one right now is a bigger threat to them? And that I'll let the audience kind of ruminate on that question. But we've been warning about this for quite some months. This is why the next man up philosophy is so important, and why we wanted to do the show with you, Steve, as a show of force, is that you take one out, 100 more appear. You take one out, 1,000 more appear. You take one out, 10,000 more appear. You take one out, we give more money. You take one out, we register more voters. You take one out, is that it only actually makes us stronger. You see, there are 3 different ways to analyze political movements or to categorize them.
And you can pause it for a second. And yeah, I think that's what we're going to have happen now with this incident with Charlie Kirk. 1,000 more Charlie Kirks are going to come in his place. People that have independent social media are going to double and triple their efforts. We know we're going in the right direction, and we don't need violence to do it.
Well, although I don't think anybody can take his place, but they'll try to do a good second, third, fourth.
That's why there needs to be 1,000 people stepping in his place.
Mm-hmm.
The fragile, the durable, and the anti-fragile. This is from Nassim Taleb, which is a phenomenal book. The fragile. The fragile is the Mitt Romney Republican Party. That is the Paul Ryan Republican Party. You say one bad word about them, they collapse, they bend the knee, they surrender, and they're relentlessly apologizing, and they're spineless. Then there is the durable. The durable is the best of the conservative movement prior to Donald Trump. That would be the conservative movement that always held on, and they put up a good fight, had some fortitude, but didn't quite have enough to be able to endure the grind or the slog of the activist regime media. And then there is the anti-fragile. I encourage everyone to read the book Anti-Fragile. In the book Anti-Fragile, Nassim Taleb argues that there are unique people, organizations, movements, restaurants, companies that actually get stronger the more pressure and opposition that is applied upon them. And when you find an anti-fragile movement, that their life force is actually what ends up being opposition. That is Donald Trump. Has anyone noticed that Donald Trump looks younger, stronger, more full of life and vitality after the indictments than before the indictments? It gives him purpose, reason of being. It gives him a telos, as the Greekers would say, or a teleological purpose for existence. This movement that we are part of right now, that historians will write about for the next 1,000 years. Let me say that again. This movement that you are part of will be written about for the next millennia. People do not remember the many movements from 400 or 500 years ago, maybe a little bit here, English Revolution or whatever. This movement will be written about for 1,000 years. And when the history books are written, it will befuddle historians 600, 700, 800 years from now. Why is it that the people that had so much to lose, the Steve Bannons, the Peter Navarros, the Donald Trumps, they kept on doubling and tripling down? Because full of fortitude and that resolute spirit, we have the chance to influence the arc of history, as the left-winger Hegelians would always say. The arc of history always bends towards justice. How about this? The arc of history will bend back towards citizen-led government, not subjects, not slaves. And we will use this dark moment as they cart you off tomorrow, Steve, and put you in handcuffs, and we say goodbye for 123 days. For 123 days, I will work harder than I ever have my entire life. This is repulsive. This is disgusting. It is outrageous. And it is a call to action for every citizen watching right now to do more. You are not doing enough.
Okay, that's good.
Not doing enough because war.
Okay, yeah, that was, I think he hit the nail on the head right there. And I think the movement we have, we're going to double and triple down now that this happened to this gentleman. And it's a travesty what did happen, but he helped build the foundation of a movement that is going to live on for a long time. And we are currently seeing,
I think, as he says.
Well, we're currently seeing the left not have this fortified movement. We're seeing it crumble and implode in real time. And the left is scattering for the hills right now.
And because it is doing that, because as we always say, there is no grounding, moral, immovable foundation. All their morals, everything they believe, everything they advocate for changes constantly. So they cannot agree with each other ever, and they cannot actually consolidate a movement because they keep getting people going out or coming in and having ideas that contradict with the other ones. While on this side, it is very clear that it is the truth, justice, faith, and the pursuit of all that is.
Well, yeah, it's the religion is a very important element, and a lot of people didn't realize how important the religious element was because it gives a non-moving moral foundation. Whether you're religious or you're non-religious, the fact that the conservative movement has a non-moving moral foundation appeals to even non-religious people.
Mm-hmm. And the problem, and we were also talking about it, is that in a way, the other side, or the left, or the new insane left, or whatever you want to call it, has been started to trying to maybe put on the skin suit, at least of some religions, because they had been seeing this shift towards that side, and they have been also worryingly infiltrating multiple denominations and multiple churches, and then now making them in their own image, which is disgusting.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So
do you want to go? Do you have another story or no?
Yes, we have quite a bit still, if
okay.
you want.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to talk about the whole Civil War thing again?
Or just whatever you have on the agenda there.
And the agenda. We're not a conference. So you did put this one in. I don't know what you think about it, but it's from Common Greens.
Okay, let's read the headline there.
It says, is Trump inciting a Civil War 2.0 to steal the midterms?
And of course, this is confession through projection. They are literally trying to start the Civil War because they are taking violent action and then endorsing that violent action in not only the mainstream media, but mainstream politicians like Ilhan Omar. It's not Donald Trump doing this. It's the left. The left desperately needs this in order to try to change something, because if nothing changes, they're seeing not only the midterms slip through their fingers, but they're seeing the next election slip through their fingers. They lose
and the whole notion of what they used to stand for that they forgot a long time ago.
People are realizing the left used to be the anti-war movement. It used to be a lot of the values the right now embodies.
Yeah, and as you say, the Conservative Party is essentially now what the left or the libs were 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it has changed, and it did have that change, and that happened, I would say, as Donald Trump descended that escalator in 2015, that is when that shift happened. And a lot of people have taken too long to realize that as well.
Yeah, we have been seeing some fractures on the right, and the right's kind of planning for what comes after Trump, and they've been kind of doing that for a little while right now. So we were seeing internal battles and internal fighting. Possibly the left could have won the midterms, because the midterms, anytime Donald Trump wasn't on the ticket in the last 10 years, the Democrats would always win those midterm elections. So with what just happened, as long as there's not some kind of black swan event, I see the Republicans actually sweeping the midterms and actually consolidating power behind Donald Trump so he can actually clean up the nation and make America great again.
But at the end of the day, it still does suck that it is because of this. And especially, and I don't know if we said it on recently, but Charlie Kirk was one of the few figures that was able to almost consolidate around every single faction that was warring. He was, for the longest time, able to kind of bring everybody together. And he was everybody that has been posting or has been talking about him and their stories with him and the way they related to him. Everybody almost mentions him as a friend, and people even are surprised to see that others are also calling him a friend and talking about all the things and all the effort he put in to be able to bring more people in instead of trying to exclude X or Y or Z because you support this or that. He was that consolidating figure, and that is why a lot of people saw him as potentially eventually the next president, the next vice president, not next, but eventually, or at least the head of the RNC.
Yeah, I always seen him as the person that was able to reach out to the youth, not necessarily the figure that brought everybody together, but the person that was able to really reach out to the youth in a way that the right has never been able to do. And you're just seeing the youth being highly attracted to conservatism and Christian values.
Well, and yes, the youth is the most important component of what he did, but just internally within the big figureheads of the movement, I would say, or of the right, he was still able to be at least friendly with almost all of them until the end.
Yeah, there was a little bit of fracturing there at the end, but we'll kind of leave that. Yeah. Okay, let's go into the next article if you want.
Well, this is also, it's not an article, but
why don't you read a little bit of that article I meant?
Oh, the one we were on?
Yeah, I hadn't read any of the article. I just grabbed it because of the headline, and I thought it was a little bit ridiculous. But let's see how they're actually trying to pitch this, because I know the Canadian news is now trying to pitch the same thing, that it's the right that is trying to resort to violence when it's completely the opposite thing that just happened.
Mm-hmm. So it says both J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom have explicitly said they believe Trump is preparing to use troops for voter suppression in blue areas of the country during the 2026 elections to prevent Democrats from taking Congress. And this was written one day before the Charlie Kirk thing happened.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
Well, it's very interesting how they're saying Donald Trump's going to use the military to suppress the vote. If you have an ID, there's no reason you can't go out to vote. The problem is in some of these sanctuary cities, it's a no ID state, and a lot of illegals are voting and swaying elections.
Mm-hmm. Another one of the topics Charlie's talking about. But we do have a video from that same press conference, I believe. Do you want me to play that one?
Yeah.
Okay. From Libs of TikTok, reminder, there was no looting, no riots, no cars set on fire, and no violence. Just prayer and vigils. We are not the left. That's what I keep saying.
But I want you to look at how Utahns reacted the last two nights. There was no rioting. There was no looting. There were no cars set on fire. There was no violence. There were vigils and prayers and people coming together to show the humanity. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe is the answer to this. We can return violence with violence. We can return hate with hate. And that's the problem with political violence, is it metastasizes. Because we can always point the finger at the other side. And at some point, we have to find.
Okay, that's pretty good.
It's going to get much, much worse.
And yeah, the left is absolutely desperate for the right to react right now with violence, but they need two things to happen. They not only need that violent act to happen, but then they need the celebration and that revenge celebration to happen. If those two things don't happen, the right is going to win, and we are going to really honor not only Charlie Kirk, but a lot of other people in the best possible way by using our words and using our ideas and bringing the change at the ballot box.
And I think also a lot of people, and not just in the US, but elsewhere, neither of us can vote in the US, but we do see the effect even of Charlie Kirk and of what he was trying to do and of what happened now that he is no longer with us in other countries too. I have seen people in Mexico talk about it. I have been and talked with people from Colombia, for example, that are completely outraged about it as well, because they also had recently a very young conservative candidate shot and killed by technically youth, but it was the opposition as well that wanted to take him out. So we do continue to see very important figures taken down, but I do think it has helped to ignite and to reframe and make people actually understand the gravity of the moment in time we were in.
We have to remember Charlie Kirk wasn't a political figure. He was a commentator. So a lot of these people in these other countries where they don't have free speech, for them to speak up takes a lot of courage. And when the left comes after Charlie Kirk, what I've seen, I know a lot of immigrants that immigrated to Canada, and a lot of those people were on the left, and then now they're completely switching sides because this violence is just completely unacceptable. And the way the left is celebrating this is just completely unacceptable to them. And they're realizing the party that has real morals, real foundation, really honors free speech and a lot of other values that they thought were embraced by the left actually aren't on the left. They're now on the right, and people are waking up to this, especially the immigrant population in the United States, in Canada. And it's funny because the immigrant population was the population the Democrats took for granted. But now that population seems to be the one waking up because they're not radicalized. They're just looking for a better life.
And because they also realize that the other side, and they see it with the politicians, with the discourse, with the media, the other side doesn't tell the truth. And they do know the truth because they're coming from a place where you have to know the truth to be able to survive. And you have to know the truth to be able to continue with your faith, etc., which most people do come from other countries still have and still value. So, but interestingly enough, also in Mexico, for example, I noticed we are seeing this same kind of rhetoric of celebrating about what happened, which is disgusting, also permeate there and here in Canada now that I'm here. And just mentioning the name Charlie Kirk, you get a bunch of people staring at you, almost like in those dark times of 2020, where the sentiment feels very different here than I think it would in the States, and I don't think it's salvageable here in Canada, at least not for a long time, especially after seeing their reaction to what happened with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk was the moderate of the right, and I know the left doesn't think this, but Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk are the moderate right. They're not the far right. Mm-hmm. But you're seeing even the far right not wanting violence right now.
And what is scary is that because they made them such vilified figures, I mean, they're making the normal, reasonable, truth-telling people
Donald Trump
like the worst. So what's left now?
Donald Trump was a former Democrat. He embodies a lot of the values that used to be found on the left. And they've been able to make this Trump derangement syndrome so people don't even look at his policies, because if they did look at his policies, they would realize he's a moderate conservative and he has a lot of traditional liberal values like anti-war.
And the problem is that he's too much of a threat for them to even consider or to even look at what he actually wants and advocates and believes. But speaking of Canada, Charlie Kirk was right about Canada, as Gen Xer says here. So let's see what he said.
I recently moved from Canada, and I can say one thing: America is great. Canada is screwed up. And I'm wondering, what would you do if you were Prime Minister of Canada right now?
I would deport Justin Trudeau the first day. That guy sucks. Canada's a real problem, man. I mean, because I would basically allow Alberta to become its own country.
I lived in Alberta too, so
yeah, Edmonton or
Calgary.
Yeah, the two best parts of Canada are Edmonton and Calgary. Beautiful country too. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Canada's a really screwed up country,
and
it's a self-hating country.
And you have to realize what Canada and the EU and the UK are currently doing. They already have speech censorship through hate speech and a lot of online censorship laws. And they're going to try to use this example of Charlie Kirk as we have to tone down right-wing rhetoric because they can't win the war of ideas. But if these countries are allowed to censor speech, you're going to literally detach yourself from the population, and you're going to have a bunch of elites running the country the way the population really doesn't want.
Mm-hmm.
As you well know, that prides itself on being polite. And this is a great lesson for those of us in the West, that your favorable characteristics of being polite, nice, and welcoming can also be your downfall. And you know that in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Super polite. Okay, we're just going to allow a bunch of foreigners over on our country. Super polite. We're not going to allow anyone. We're not going to have free speech. Canada's got a big problem. It does not have the Constitution. So you do not have robust free speech protections. You do not have Second Amendment protections. So the government is able to do whatever they want. I wouldn't want to be Prime Minister of Canada. I wouldn't last very long. But between Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver, you have some of the most liberal cities on the planet, as you well know. Canada, I think, is bringing in like half of its population in the next decade in immigrants. It's just not sustainable.
I know.
It's too bad. It was a once great country. Canada has fallen.
I know. I'm thankful that I moved here, though.
Do you have a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
Oh, good for you.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I was born in America, but then I moved to from California.
You won the lottery.
I know.
God bless, man.
Right,
Thank you.
Okay, that's pretty good. So
He
yeah,
was always so polite and so open to discussion and so welcoming. I do have a clip later on about for all the people that say that he wanted to throw rocks at people from the alphabet community. It's not true.
But Canada is in real trouble because the government is being allowed to censor speech, so they're able to pick what speech is right and what speech is wrong. And a lot of people, especially immigrants, which are flooding into Canada, don't understand the English language very well, so they don't understand what the government is doing. They're putting their hand on the scale of free speech and justice and politics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can go into whatever you got next for us.
Well, Walker, hi Walker. Thank you for being here on our weird 2-3 country show. Walker says the news is still very sad because even though we made different arguments, the fact what this guy did shows that people in the USA are no longer appreciating the value of freedom.
Yeah.
And that is also and they don't understand what freedom means, why it's important, and what leads to freedom, and what sustains freedom, which is free speech. It is education. It is knowledge. It is the truth, knowing what the truth is even. It is being a human. It is understanding the gravity and consequence of death, of life, and the importance of it. And it has been forgotten. And Walker also...
We need the United States now more than ever because every other Western country is taking the march towards socialism and authoritarianism. If the United States goes a different way, protects the Constitution, protects free speech, then if these other countries do go into socialism and do collapse and their economies collapse, their citizens are going to demand change, and they're going to point to the United States as the example. Without the United States as the example, there is nothing to point to for those citizens. So that citizens won't be able to demand something better from their government.
Mm-hmm. Walker also says, the truth is that I didn't agree with Charlie on the points of abortion and other things, but seeing that in the USA it has reached that point, it's simply that the USA has not been very subverted. And I did appreciate with Charlie specifically that, yes, he did talk about faith, but a lot of the arguments he made were not faith-based at all. He was able to walk that very fine and difficult line to walk, especially for someone of faith, of being able to give arguments without bringing in, and for people that didn't share the faith or did not, or even hate the faith. And he was still able to make those arguments. And I did agree with him on, I think, most of the things he believed and espoused. Not, I don't share the faith, obviously, but just in general, I think the way he was able to communicate, the way he was able to explain and educate people was what was the most valuable about him.
Yeah, I would say I agreed with him on almost everything except for Israel. A lot of people disagreed with him on Israel, but he had that open dialogue because the leadership of TPUSA came to him and said they don't agree with him on that issue, so he shouldn't speak for everybody on that issue. And he actually had an open public dialogue about that, and he was actually shifting his beliefs as he would engage in the in debate with the leadership of TPUSA. It's not that he was against Israel or the leadership of TPUSA was against Israel. It's they wanted to put America first. And they don't want to have unlimited funding for Israel that's going to get America and endless wars in the Middle East.
And on that point, I know a lot of people take a lot of give it a lot of importance, the whole Israel assets, etc. But at this point in time, I really do think America has to just concentrate on itself, concentrate on what has happened, and trying to search for answers and explanations elsewhere, I think, is just a way to try to cover up the rot that is within.
Well, and I will say this.
Productive conversation to have, even, I would say, at this moment.
Well, I would even say this. Charlie Kirk was a huge supporter of Israel for most of his career, but recently the leadership had been coming to him and there was a disagreement, and he did have that public dialogue, and Netanyahu invited him over to Israel. He turned Netanyahu down. Then Netanyahu offered him millions of dollars for TPUSA. And again, Charlie Kirk turned him down because the leadership didn't agree with it. So even though he personally may have agreed with it, he understood he is walking a very fine line, and he was very careful on who his donors were.
Walker also asks or says, Guy, media say that the guy was a Republican again, like the guy who attempted on Trump's life. Is it true? No, his family was. He was clearly not. But the media, of course, will always try to spin it that way. If there's an inkling that they can put it on the right or the Republicans, they will, and they will try. And it is disgusting that they're doing this because, once again, it's moving away from the truth. It's trying to make up their own little story and confuse people. And I have seen people, not just Walker, but other people ask me, even today, just as the news came out, oh, it says here that he was from a conservative family. Yes, he was not conservative. That's the issue. That's the distortion.
Yeah, a lot of people that come from religious and conservative families actually build up a resentment because they're not showed the other side of the coin. So when they come of age or they enter their teens or they go off to college, especially when they go off to college or through online radicalization, they have a resentment because they didn't have a debate in their home, and then they're indoctrinated into the other side. And I think that's what happened here.
Probably. And also, again, it is the rot within the institutions. His family may have been very conservative, and I don't know, but I'm speculating here from things I've heard, but Mormon even, and have a lot of faith leaders as friends. And his father was also, I believe, a sheriff, or was at least involved in some sort of law enforcement. But that doesn't mean that the kid going to public school, going to university, having a little indoctrination machine on his hand 24/7, and apparently being a pretty online person, what his family was not able to continue to instill in him, it was able to be taken away by the rot within institutions, the rot within that we see every day, that we talk about every day, that has become ingrained within culture, and a very specific side of culture in the US, and not only in the US.
Yeah, and you just have to ask yourself, like, what conservative is going after Charlie Kirk? It's just ridiculous at its base, and the fact that they would try to sell a lie like that is absolutely crazy. There's no conservative that would want Charlie Kirk to not be on this planet.
Not just outrageous, but it's also disgusting that they want to twist the truth 2 days after we all saw a public execution of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Like that's the point they're at. That's why I say they don't understand the gravity of death. They don't understand the sanctity.
Well, they do understand the gravity of the situation, because this means political death for them. If the right doesn't strike back in a violent way, then they've lost the plot. That's it for the Democratic Party. They desperately need the right to strike back, so much so that they need to frame this guy as a conservative person going after another conservative, because they have to try to deny this at every possible cost, because you're seeing a mass exodus. The mask is coming off of the Democratic Party for the few moderates that are left over there.
Mm-hmm. Walker says, that's what I thought. People can come from a conservative or woke family and be the opposite. Exactly. And I mean, especially when you're young, I'm sure anybody that has been young and tried to rebel will know that you usually try to go against what your parents are telling you. And most of the time that will be leaning more towards the left. And that has been, I mean, there's this whole phrase about it, that if you're what was it? If you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative in your 30s, you have no brains, something like that. But I mean, we do see it happen. And it is a comedy trope and a common trope in movies for a reason, because it happens, and even more now that they don't even have to go to college. It can happen K through 12 in the US, or online on their phones, or through friends, that then they all get contagion, like with the whole trans issue, becomes a contagion.
Yeah, and I would also say this. A lot of conservative families will not really teach conservatism, what it really means, or religious families will just have a religious atmosphere, but not teach why it's important to have these values, why it's important to have these beliefs. They just say this is right and this is wrong. And then it's very easy to not indoctrinate somebody that's really just only lived on the surface level of conservatism or religiosity. This is why you see so many people that are really raised in religious households, but not really taught the fundamental core of what religion is.
Mm-hmm. And I think it is because a lot of people might get complacent with believing that nothing is going to change in the world, but now the world has gravely changed. And I think everybody, families, everything has to change with it too, and understand why it's still important, and not just assume it is something that will carry on and will persevere. It has to be conserved. That's why we're conservatives. But we do have, do you want to watch the craziness in Canada, the reporting there?
Yeah,
Here?
this was actually pretty crazy.
So from CBC Watcher, because the CBC is a Canadian media outlet, which is subsidized by the government still, but they need a watcher because they are that insane all the time. It says, what a difference 24 hours at CBC makes. Prominent conservative commentator, is how they first referred to Charlie, becomes far-right activist Charlie Kirk. There is seriously something wrong with CBC activists. So should we watch the first one this one first?
Yeah, let's watch it.
Okay, because I don't know what order they're in.
Still ahead, the latest on the killing of far-right activist Charlie Kirk in the U.S. Investigators have released images of a person of interest. We'll have more on that just ahead here on CBC News Network.
A far-right activist, I would much more call him a civil rights leader. And he is really standing up for the basic civil right of free speech. And he was very good at connecting with the youth on these basic principles. So the fact that the Canadian media would talk about him in that way just after his death is really showing their true colors. And I know a lot of people are upset about the left celebrating and the media talking this way and disparaging him, but it's only going to hollow out the Democratic Party. And I think it's best to let these people say these things and to show it, because the moderates and the people that are not politically active, when they see people celebrating this, they're going to leave that party. Even if they don't come over to the conservative side, they're just not going to be politically active in the next election because they're going to be disenfranchised.
And the people that do have to wake up, the ones that still do believe in the original principles, et cetera, justice, freedom, whatever, from the liberal side, exactly, they can either come this way or at least break free from that. What?
He gave the Superman logo or slogan, truth, justice, and the American way, and all
I
that.
didn't say the American way.
Well, that was the next
freedom.
part. Yeah.
I said freedom. But what was I going to say? Now you interrupted me. I don't remember. Oh, they have to wake up from this but they will have this cognitive dissonance, and it will be pretty hard for a lot of them. But I think this, unfortunately, might just force them out the door and out from that cognitive dissonance finally, to realize what they have been supporting and what they thought was still the left or Democrats or whatever, progressives, whatever you want to call it, isn't that, and has not been for a long time. And they haven't wanted, because believe me, I've had this conversation with close friends of mine that just do not see the same things that I see, but now it's visible for everybody. It's out there for everybody, unfortunately, through the tragic passing of Charlie, who was so important to do exactly this. And he was being successful, especially with the young people. But I think this will help people break away from the cognitive dissonance and finally see them for what they are, and see the movement for what it is, the things they've been supporting for what it is.
Well, and just wait until the debate sphere gets a hold of this stuff. Like, the Democrats are put in a position now where there is no way they're going to win in the debate sphere. It's they're going to be worse off than they were before, and they're not going to want to engage in that. So they're either going to try to engage in censorship or violence. And then the American government isn't having any part of censorship, but other governments around the world are. So I think a lot of these I think the Democratic Party in the United States might be better off trying to go to these other countries and promote censorship and somehow hope they can win in the next election.
Which is what I said. And I have pointed out that they have been trying to do that. For example, in Mexico, there are NGOs from the USA that have taken cover in third world countries. I don't believe that, but let's just call them that, or less developed countries, and have build those institutions there using USAID, but now not even, because now it is self-sustaining within the countries, to continue the same ideology and to infect other parts in a way to maybe keep it there for a while and then try to bring it back once they see some fractures within the movement. But I think this just pretty much consolidated and solidified it for a much longer time because of the outrage and the anger and the retribution in a positive way that can be done for this and in the name of Charlie.
Okay, let's continue to go here. With
But
the
we
next
have
clip.
seen one Democrat that has been for a while now saying different things.
Did you have another clip of CBC?
No, I have one about John Fetterman.
Oh, okay.
And he has been speaking out against his own party almost.
And I honestly used to hate this guy because his wife was a complete socialist, but I think they broke up, and he is the future of the Democratic Party. If they want a future, they're going to need to either put Fetterman up in a more prominent role, or Newsom's going to have to try to look more like Fetterman, because he seems to be the only sane voice in the Democratic Party. He's a working man and he stands up for workers' rights. That's something the Democrats could really rally around if they want to try to have a base and some kind of sanity again. The problem is the left absolutely hates him, even though he's a Democrat, because he embodies all the old values of the Democrats, and the Republicans now have those values. So a lot of liberals view this gentleman as a Republican, even though he's a Democrat.
And that is a very big if. But John Fetterman's a socialist like AOC, you are morons. Yes. Nah.
And
I
he
wanted to play.
And he went in to meet with Trump. He's met with JD Vance. He's met with the administration. He's willing to compromise on certain things to get things done. He's willing to reach across the aisle. This is what I'm talking about when I say a politician that can reach across the aisle. There's not many Democrats like this that are left. There are quite a few Republicans like this.
So it won't let me play it, but basically someone asked him, what do you think? He said, I was in a former communist nation, and I said, some lefties in my party are talking about socialism now. What do you think? He said, this is the worst thing ever. You will need a reality check if you adopt any of those things. You are morons.
Yeah. And he called AOC a moron as well the other day. So good on Johnny boy there.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if he came over to the Republican Party. And if he does, I say they should welcome him with open arms.
And coming back over to Canada, where I am in the insanity, we have seen, as I mentioned at the top of the show, a lot of reactions positively talking about what happened to Charlie, which is despicable and disgusting. But the U.S. is not just standing idle to what they have been saying here from the Toronto Sun. Warmington says Canadians celebrating Charlie Kirk's unaliving may be banned from the U.S. The U.S. State Department is keeping track of people inside and outside of their country who are applauding the conservative influencer's murder.
Yeah, and this may seem like a contradiction on my part, but I completely agree with this policy. These are not citizens of the United States. They're not automatically should be granted entry. If they're radicals or they may go towards violence because of what they're saying, they should not be allowed in. And I know I have the opposite positions when it comes to U.S. citizens. If you're a U.S. citizen and you're celebrating, I don't think you should lose your job. I think you need to let those people speak freely, and there's going to be a natural consequence, and that is going to be the Democratic Party is going to hollow itself out because the moderates want nothing to do with those radicals. So I think having a different policy for non-U.S. citizens as you do for U.S. citizens is completely acceptable here. I definitely think Trump should implement a policy like this.
And in a way, I guess it would be apropos, or it would go with them maybe understanding the difference of the importance of U.S. citizenship, for example, and what the freedoms being a U.S. citizen gives you that isn't afforded to others in other countries.
Yeah.
So it says a reaction to the unaliving of Charlie Kirk has been almost as brutal and disturbing as the slaying itself. One Canadian journalist took to social media to say it was delicious to see Kirk shot and ended with a gun, while a University of Toronto professor posted on X that shooting is too good for a guy like the 31-year-old conservative influencer. Another university, and these are all university students or faculty members, another university faculty member from British Columbia wrote, "It is sometimes necessary to kill."
Yeah, and I will also say this. I don't want to see Trump take action against U.S. citizens that are celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, because it will make him look authoritarian and it will work against him in the midterms. Just let them celebrate. That will go on to social media. The moderate Democrats will hollow out and walk away from the party and be non-politically active. But when it comes to Canadian citizens or people from other countries, you should completely not let them into the United States. They do not have the same rights U.S. citizens do within the United States.
And a Canadian social worker.
And that will have a huge impact, because a lot of Canadians, if they're in the media or in entertainment or a lot of other fields, really they make a lot of their money in the United States or on U.S. social media, and they have to travel to the United States. So this would have a huge impact.
And a Canadian social worker. And I did want to say, we have seen a lot of normal people also being either fired or having consequences, or being at least shown all over social media for their disgusting comments about the death of Charlie Kirk, where we see nurses. There was one very famous nurse that came up saying disgusting things, professors, university professors, kindergarten teachers, school teachers, like I said, nurses, social workers, pilots, but also, for example, a member of the Secret Service. So it is interesting. A lot of people are also realizing that maybe they didn't want to believe that it's not just the crazy people online or the crazy people you see at protests. In a lot of senses, it might be your next door neighbor. A lot of people finding out through social media that maybe their friends had very different ideas than they thought they did, and that had kept them quiet inside until now. But that is the importance of free speech. That's where you need to see that to actually believe it. For the longest time, you can call it out and talk about it, but nobody believes it until they see it firsthand. Same with the employers of these people.
And if the Canadian people think celebrating Charlie Kirk's death is going to do them any favors when it comes to tariffs, it's going to do them nothing. And right now they are on the razor's edge of a financial collapse. So they may want to be really cautious of what they're saying up in Canada. It's a bunch of socialists and communists. And yeah, God help them. But I hope that Canada does change one day.
And Walker says there's a guy in the U.S. who was supposedly granted asylum by the U.S. for political persecution. He's from the FMLN, the Communist Party here in El Salvador, and he celebrated what happened. However, I don't know if deportation applies to someone with asylum, because they can argue their life is in danger with Bukele. The guy, I think, is queer or something like that. I mean, he can be deported elsewhere. He doesn't have to go back to El Salvador. So I think a lot of the asylum claims have been able to, at least some people have been able to go back somewhere else, not maybe where they came from or where they were being persecuted. But it just shows the hypocrisy, once again, of a lot of people, even the ones that should know better because they've lived through it. But it doesn't exempt them from, and as Guy said, especially if you're not a U.S. citizen and if you're there through the good grace of the U.S. granting you asylum status, then maybe this could be a learning opportunity for that man.
Well, I would also like to see, oh God, what was I going to say? Oh, I would like to see Trump offer asylum or a path towards citizenship for conservatives that no longer want to live in Canada. That would absolutely hollow out Canada and the Canadian economy. All the oil workers, all the mining workers, all your working class, the people that really have put Canada on their shoulders, even though the Canadian government constantly wants to spit on them. If Trump did that, it would absolutely hollow out Canada. And shortly after that, I think Canada would become the 51st state. We're quickly heading in that direction. If Canada doesn't make a change, certain provinces in Canada may vote to become the 51st state or at least become independent.
And crazy.
I think this Charlie Kirk situation is really amplifying tensions within Canada.
But crazily enough, at least for now, I haven't seen much happening on the streets, but I have heard, because I have asked, because I'm a nosy bitch of anybody that will answer me, what they think about the current government. Of course, I'd say it like in a nice way or just probing. But a lot of people have said, and unfortunately, I have heard a lot of people say, oh, well, Mark Carney seems to be doing good. Oh, Mark Carney seems better. Seems like things are getting better. And I'm like, did you not see the report we just talked about on Friday, where he had to come out and finally say that nothing he had done was working? But again, it just shows where the people themselves are at and where the information itself is at. And it's
once the economy collapses, they're going to wake the heck up. And I think Donald Trump needs to hit them hard on this tariff deal and on the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Mexico has been doing nothing but cooperate with the United States, while Canada has been doing completely the opposite.
And Norberto Molina says, hello, Norberto, says, thanks a lot for for still talking about this. And
yeah, this is it.
At least myself, I will continue to talk about this for a long time, because it did affect me quite a bit.
This is an important conversation to talk about, not just in the US context, but in the worldwide context, because free speech is becoming so censored in Western countries right now. Mm-hmm. And Charlie Kirk really embodied that into one person. And the radical leftists try to extinguish that. And they're not going to extinguish it, because there's going to be 1,000 people just like me, Nat, and 1,000 other content creators stepping up and trying to really honor his memory.
And not only in the US, but worldwide, because I have seen it. And I have seen so many people all over the world talking about him, praising him, saying he changed their lives, that they never met him, but the impact that he had was so strong and important, especially because he led through not just debate, but education, information, the truth, finding the truth, learning more, educating yourself more. He never went to college. He spoke very strongly against college and the way that they are teaching things now, and encouraged a thirst for knowledge as well, but real knowledge that is tangible and shows you the way to the truth.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because the left is censoring their own side. The radical progressives, if the regular moderate leftists step out of line, they're going to shut them down. They don't want to have discussion. They don't want to have the debate. They want to give their orders from the top down. They say, this is the way it is. This is what we believe. There are 64 genders, blah, blah, blah. Charlie Kirk was doing the left a favor, because he gave them a space to actually have the debate and put forth their best ideas. Mm-hmm. And they spit all over it.
I mean, that was a nice option. Walker says, and the guy, the asylum seeker, literally left because he said there was no freedom of expression here. And that is the usual hypocrisy and not understanding reality that we keep mentioning. But what do you want to go on to next? Because we gotta go soon-ish.
Okay, whatever you have next.
Well, there's
only a couple left, I think.
Yeah. You put up Bernie. I'm still not willing. Oh, hold on. Still not willing to forgive and forget.
Okay, I will say this. He starts out this very well. And as far as the Democrat goes, I guess this is the best you can hope from them. Near the end of his little speech he gives here, he does try to say, oh, it's both sides. It's this, it's that. No, it's not both sides. And a lot of the incidents he's saying is right-wing violence were actually left-wingers on left-wingers. The right isn't looking for violence, and when violence does happen or come from the right wing, the rest of the right disavows it. You don't see them celebrating it. But
that's condemned.
But I will say this was one of the better Democrats that did come out, because some of the Democrats, like Ilhan Omar, just had insane takes, and this is coming from their political leadership. Their online personalities are just absolutely crazy. I mean, if you want to see a crazy take, you just watch Destiny.
And not just the online well-known people, but just random people. Again, flight attendants, people that just get found out by their friends, and then the friends are so shocked they send that information off to people that can get them fired. And we have been seeing that as well. But with Bernie, I will say, and I haven't seen what he said, but he did have some ideas that were close to, and he could have gotten closer to the other side or gained support from that. And a lot of Bernie bros turned then to Trump once he was taken out by his
He
own
sold
party,
out.
but he still stayed there. Exactly.
He completely sold out. He has no values. You can't believe this guy anymore. You can't trust him. And a lot of the anti-war sentiment he was fomenting is now on the right. And that's why a lot of Bernie bros came over to the right. Oh, let's play what he has to say anyway, if it's working.
Okay, before I forget, I do want to say the whole both sidism thing, it's not the same. And anybody on the left or anybody in general that wants to start or end their statement or their thought with, well, it's on both sides, or, oh, well, both sides have to. No, it's not on both sides, and it's not the same. And it has to be pointed out, because otherwise it continues to perpetuate that narrow way of seeing things.
Well, it's not both. It's not both sides, because the right knows as long as we don't resort to violence, we've won the game. It's game, set, match right now. And if somebody does step out of line, some kind of radical, the rest of the right is going to push him out and not endorse him, not celebrate. Violence is not the answer. This is coming from every right-wing commentator, and not just on this situation, but in every situation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for joining me. I want to say a few words regarding the terrible murder yesterday of Charlie Kirk, someone who I strongly disagreed with on almost every issue, but who was clearly a very smart and effective communicator and organizer, and someone unafraid to get out into the world and engage the public. My condolences go out to his wife and his family. A free and democratic society, which is what America is supposed to be about, depends upon the basic premise that people can speak out, organize, and take part in public life without fear, without worrying that they might be killed, injured, or humiliated for expressing their political views. In fact, that is the essence of what freedom is about and what democracy is about. You have a point of view, that's great. I have a point of view that is different than yours. That's great. Let's argue it out. We make our case to the American people at the local, state, and federal levels, and we hold free elections in which the people decide what they want. That's called freedom and democracy. And I want as many people as possible to participate in that process without fear. Freedom and democracy is not about political violence. It is not about assassinating public officials. It is not about trying to intimidate people who speak out on an issue. Political violence, in fact, is political cowardice. It means that you cannot convince people of the correctness of your ideas, and you have to impose them through force. Every American, no matter what one's political point of view may be, must condemn all forms of political violence and all forms of intimidation. We must welcome and respect dissenting points of view. That's what our Constitution is about. That's what our Bill of Rights is about. That, in fact, is what freedom is about. The murder of Charlie Kirk is part of a disturbing rise in political violence that threatens to hollow out public.
And yeah, if he would have stopped the speech there, that was a perfect speech, and that would have been accepted by all Democrats. But he's going to go on and on here about how it's the right, how it's the left, blah, blah, blah. But
I could even tell he was going there, and I was like, no.
It's a damn shame, because he would have got a lot of conservative support on his side if he would have just left it there. And the funny thing is, Bernie Sanders had an attempt on his life at one point, and the Democratic Party shut him up. Rather than face another assassination, he decided to sell out.
public life and make people afraid of participating. From the January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol, to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, to the attack on Paul Pelosi, to the attempted kidnapping of Michigan Governor Whitmer,
Pause
the
it.
murder of Minnesota Speaker of the
Paul
House.
Pelosi was assaulted in his house by his gay street lover, and the Michigan thing was a complete hoax set up by the FBI itself. This is crazy. The Whitmer thing.
Yeah.
The fact that he put those two things, and I could say there is some right-wing violence, but he's giving it examples that are completely unfounded.
And that are, again, still based on the lies that they have told themselves. So.
And when there has been actual right-wing violence, the right wing absolutely disavows it. We know we're winning. There's no reason for violence. We're winning the war of ideas, and we are on the debate sphere. And that's what Charlie Kirk represented, and that's how we're going to conduct ourselves going forward.
House, Melissa Hortman and her husband, to the arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, to the shooting of United Health Executive Brian Thompson, and the shooting several years ago of Representative Steve Scalise, this chilling rise in violence has targeted public officials across the political spectrum. Sadly, this is not a new phenomenon. We all remember the assassinations of President Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Senator Robert F. Kennedy, John Lennon, Medgar Evers, and the attempted assassinations of President Ronald Reagan and Alabama Governor George Wallace.
Okay, we can stop it.
This is a difficult.
And I will just say this, he did mention the assassinations of JFK, MLK, and Malcolm X. We're currently looking at 2 attempted assassinations on Donald Trump, which is very similar to JFK for the right. And then Charlie Kirk is very similar to MLK. He is a civil rights leader on the right. And then we did have 2 attempted assassinations of a more radical figure, which would be the equivalent of Malcolm X in Andrew Tate and in Nick Fuentes. So it's very interesting that all this political violence of the biggest political figures is on the right now. And it kind of mirrors the same figures back in the 60s and 70s. Well, Emma, and you can roll your eyes at Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes, but it would have been very similar to Malcolm X.
I mean, yeah, Malcolm was more
radical
and violent, yes. But it's just an interesting comparison. But I mean, either way, it is very clear, and it is annoying and upsetting every time they lie about where it comes from and the both sidesism. And I think, again, whoever continues down the both sidesism line doesn't get it and hasn't gotten it. And I wouldn't put my faith in them being able yet to fully understand and recapitulate about what
you're not seeing the right celebrate when a left-wing figure is assassinated or attempted assassination. That's the difference. Because
the right didn't celebrate
hold on
when he got terminal cancer.
Hold on.
Bader Ginsburg.
Hold on. When you celebrate the assassination of somebody, what it does, it sends a message to your base. Let's do it again. It's okay. You did great. So it puts the next person up to bat. And then we've seen online that they've had these hit lists. The left is literally putting it out today. So they're celebrating what's happening, and then they're putting out a list of who they want to go next. The right doesn't do that. The right disavows the violence. They said it's not acceptable.
And they keep doing the lists and targeting other people who, I mean, the right has to have a lot more security than the left, even just for their online political commentators that shouldn't need security, really. I mean, unless it becomes someone really, really big. But I was saying, exactly, the right does not celebrate. Even most people didn't celebrate that Joe Biden has terminal cancer. Most people said, this is terrible, this is horrible. He shouldn't have been in office. He should have been in hospice care or with a little blanket sitting on a chair enjoying his last years of life. And they condemned his policies, and they condemned the way all the administration was conducted, but not the man himself at a time of desperation and at a sad time for him and his family. And at the same time, for example, the Trump clip that has been going viral today, I think, of him when he found out Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away, the Supreme Court justice who was advocating always for feminism and women's rights and abortion and etc., who also was against Roe versus Wade, by the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who everybody always said she was instrumental for that. She was against the arguments within that decision itself. But when Trump found out as he got off a plane that she had passed away, the first thing he said was, "Oh, that's terrible to hear. Oh, she was a very strong, intelligent, important woman for the country." And that's about all he said. And then the first thing, even if it was the first thing he was thinking, which I don't think it was, that, oh, now I get to name someone, the first words out of his mouth were, "Oh, she was a great woman. I may have not agreed with her, but she was a great woman."
I will say this about January 6th. Yes, people on the right don't view January 6th as the same kind of violent incident which happened to Charlie Kirk and things like this, because it's not. People didn't die that day. Nobody died except for one person on the right that got shot in the face. And so the fact that they want to try to equivalate the two things, I would say January 6th doesn't even really compare to the BLM riots, because in the BLM riots, people were getting their homes burned down. Federal buildings were being attacked. People were losing their lives on the streets in the BLM riots. In January 6th, that didn't happen. But I would say both incidents are protests that got out of hand. The right is just not resorting to violence in the same targeted way that the left is. And when it does happen on the right, which is rare, we are disavowing it. We are not praising these people and say, okay, who do we want to get next?
And again, we just saw the string of shootings at several different religious schools, Catholic schools, religious schools, by a very specific group of people, which Charlie did talk about a lot and did exemplify. And for that, he was also celebrated for, now that he's not with us, but also pointing that out, or pointing out the whole mental illness, what happened to the Ukrainian refugee in the US just weeks ago, which Charlie was still talking about and was still trying to, tell people why it was wrong, and why policies and further changes of legislation to crime and etc. was important. I mean, we just saw this, and we still see people advocating for that, for more of that, for saying that because he was saying the truth about those incidents or about those things, he was X, Y, Z. And even now, still today, they're still saying he was all those things: racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic, etc., which is not true, and which is even worse now that he's not here. But it should even give more resolve to people that think like him or that want to still advocate for free speech to continue to do so.
Well, they want to say that now that he's gone and he can't defend himself, but when he had, but hold, let me finish. We're done. We can be done for today.
Well, no, I meant like they didn't mind to do it when he was alive.
No, that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say was they want to say it now that he can't defend himself. He had an open debate where you could call him all those things, and they tried, and he was able to defend himself from those accusations by justifying the words he was saying on statistics and facts.
Exactly, and now they're not even taking that into consideration. But luckily, there are a lot of people online and in the public sphere being able to still not let them smear him the way they're trying to, because it is very hard to. You just play 2-3 clips and you understand and realize that what was written, or those snippets that are being shown, is not actually what he was saying. The New York Times had to post a correction also yesterday, I believe, where they were saying something completely wrong, that he was anti-Semitic, etc., when he was actually just reading something and then actually critiquing what he was reading, but they only cut and wrote about that little snippet where it was somebody else's words, it wasn't his. So you can see the thirst to completely twist his words because they're not convenient for them, especially now that they've martyrized him.
Okay, I think we're kind of good for today. The dog's going a little bit crazy. I got to take care of things here.
Yes, but thank you so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Usually I am with the guy in the same studio. At the moment, I am
she's in Vancouver,
Canada.
And I'm in Mexico City. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Adios.
We will see. Okay, hold on. I don't even know how to turn it off.